The ashes of World War I settled upon a wounded Europe, grappling with devastation and disillusionment. From the wreckage emerged a toxic ideology, fascism. This ideology preyed upon fears, promising order and national rejuvenation through authoritarian rule. Italy's turmoil became fertile ground for Mussolini's National Fascist Party. Germany, humiliated and burdened, found a voice in Hitler's NSDAP. Both movements exploited nationalistic fervor and resentment. They promised a break from democracy, offering a strong centralized state. This dangerous cocktail propelled fascist parties to power, casting a long shadow over the 20th century. Both Mussolini and Hitler employed a chillingly similar playbook in their pursuit of absolute power. They understood the power of spectacle and propaganda, masterfully crafting rallies and speeches that stirred the emotions of the masses. These rallies, often marked by militaristic pomp and fervent displays of national pride, served to cultivate a cult of personality around the leader. Propaganda, disseminated through newspapers, radio, and film, painted a distorted reality, scapegoating minorities, demonizing opponents, and glorifying the fascist agenda. Violence and intimidation became tools of control, with paramilitary groups like Italy's Black Shirts and Germany's Sturmabteilung or SA, silencing dissent through intimidation, assault, and murder. Political opponents were imprisoned, exiled, or simply disappeared, creating a climate of fear that choked out any remaining opposition. These tactics, employed with ruthless efficiency, allowed Mussolini and Hitler to dismantle democratic institutions, consolidate their grip on power, and ultimately drag their nations and the world into the abyss of World War II. Today, decades after the fall of the Third Reich, the spectre of authoritarianism once again haunts the global stage. From the rise of populist strongmen to the erosion of democratic norms, the warning signs are flashing bright red. Modern autocrats, though often cloaked in the garb of populism and nationalism, employ a familiar playbook, echoing the tactics of their 20th century predecessors. They cultivate cults of personality, demonize opponents, and erode democratic institutions, all while exploiting the anxieties of a rapidly changing world. The rise of social media and the 24-hour news cycle have provided these modern-day authoritarians with even more potent tools for disseminating propaganda and manipulating public opinion. The echo chambers of the internet can easily be weaponized to spread disinformation, sow discord, and undermine trust in democratic institutions. Propaganda, the lifeblood of authoritarian regimes, thrives in an environment where fear and uncertainty have taken root. Just as Hitler and Mussolini exploited the economic anxieties and social divisions of their time, so too do modern autocrats prey upon the insecurities of the present. Migrant crises, economic downturns, and global pandemics become fertile ground for sowing fear and division. The other, be it a religious minority, a political opponent, or simply those who hold different views, is demonized as a threat to national security or cultural identity. Social media, with its algorithms designed to amplify engagement, has become a breeding ground for disinformation and hate speech. False narratives, often peddled by state-sponsored actors, spread like wildfire through these digital echo chambers, poisoning public discourse and eroding trust in legitimate sources of information. Fear, once ignited, becomes a powerful tool for control, making people more willing to accept authoritarian solutions and less likely to challenge the erosion of their freedoms. Section 5. The distortion of heritage, Italy's fall from grace. Mussolini, in his quest to forge a new Roman Empire, cynically manipulated Italy's rich history and cultural heritage to serve his fascist agenda. He invoked the glories of ancient Rome, promising a return to national greatness and a restoration of Italy's rightful place on the world stage. Ancient monuments were repurposed as backdrops for fascist rallies. and the symbols and imagery of the Roman Empire were appropriated to lend an air of historical legitimacy to the regime. This manipulation of history served to mask the brutal reality of fascist rule, cloaking its violence and oppression in a seductive narrative of national revival. Italy's tragic descent into fascism stands as a stark reminder of how easily cultural pride can be twisted and manipulated to serve the interests of authoritarianism. It serves as a cautionary tale for our times, a reminder that even the most cherished aspects of our national identity can be weaponized to undermine the very values they represent. The erosion of democracy is rarely a sudden, cataclysmic event. More often than not, it is a gradual process, a slow chipping away at the foundations of freedom, often disguised as necessary measures to restore order or protect national security. Vigilance, then, becomes the first line of defense against tyranny. We must be vigilant in defending the institutions that safeguard our freedoms: a free press, an independent judiciary, and a robust civil society. We must be wary of those who seek to silence dissent, who demonize their opponents, and who chip away at the checks and balances that prevent the concentration of power. The right to vote, to assemble peacefully, and to speak truth to power are not mere privileges to be granted or revoked at the whim of the powerful. They are the very cornerstones of a free society, and their defense requires constant vigilance and unwavering commitment. Economic hardship and inequality have long been fertile ground for extremist ideologies. When people are struggling to make ends meet, when they feel left behind by the system, they become more susceptible to the siren song of demagogues who offer simple solutions to complex problems. The Great Depression, for example, created the conditions for the rise of Nazism in Germany. The economic devastation, coupled with political instability and social unrest, provided a receptive audience for Hitler's message of national rebirth through authoritarian rule. Today, as we grapple with the economic fallout of global pandemics, climate change, and technological disruption, it is more important than ever to address the root causes of inequality and to ensure that the benefits of economic growth are shared more equitably. Failure to do so risks creating the very conditions that allow extremism to flourish, paving the way for a new generation of authoritarians to exploit the frustrations of the marginalized and the anxieties of the disaffected. The digital age, while offering unprecedented opportunities for connection and communication, has also provided new avenues for the spread of fascist ideology and the erosion of democratic values. Social media platforms, with their algorithms designed to maximize engagement, can easily become echo chambers where extremist views go unchallenged and where disinformation spreads like wildfire. The anonymity of the internet emboldens hate speech and online harassment, while the sheer volume of information makes it difficult to discern truth from falsehood. We must be vigilant in recognizing and confronting online manifestations of fascism, whether it be in the form of hate speech, disinformation campaigns, or the online harassment of journalists and activists. We must demand greater accountability from social media companies to combat the spread of hate speech and disinformation on their platforms. And we must equip ourselves with the critical thinking skills necessary to navigate the digital landscape and to distinguish fact from fiction. The fight against fascism is not a battle consigned to the history books. It is an ongoing struggle, a perpetual vigilance against the forces of hatred, intolerance, and authoritarianism that threaten to extinguish the flame of freedom. We must learn from the mistakes of the past, recognizing the warning signs of tyranny and confronting them head-on. We must defend the institutions that safeguard our freedoms, hold our leaders accountable, and speak out against injustice wherever we see it. The future of democracy depends on our willingness to engage in this struggle, to stand up for our values and to ensure that the horrors of the past are never repeated. Let us heed the lessons of history and summon the courage to defend our freedoms. The ghosts of the past are watching. Let us prove that we have learned from their mistakes.